7:40 a.m. ESPN 97.7 and 100.1. Watch live on QSportsTalk.com.
Welcome on back, Orange Nation, on ESPN Syracuse 97.7, 100.1 FM, ESPN Utica Rome as well. Watch on Q Sports Talk, where you'll see our next guest, Wes Durham, and you'll still get to hear our artist of the day, Justin Bieber. Today's his birthday. The Biebs is turning 30. Wow, time flies. This one's Intentions with Quavo of Migos. You know Migos, Steve?
I do know Migos.
Oh, street cred.
They have something about water, right? Like clear water, or isn't what? Help me out here.
I don't know which one you're talking about.
Isn't that their big hit?
Are you talking about Pure Water?
Pure Water.
Which is like a DJ Mustard song? No, Steve, you got to listen to No Label too.
All right.
You got to listen to No Label too.
I should have just kept my mouth shut and said, yes, I know who Migos is.
Culture?
What's Culture?
I'm bringing Wes in,
all
Steve.
Right.
We'll talk about it during the break.
All right. The great Wes Durham joining us here on the show. He'll be on the call tomorrow night. Syracuse and Louisville on the ACC network. Wes, how are you today?
Steve, all I can tell you is Migos is from Atlanta. Quavo used to be a high school quarterback back in the day.
How about that?
And my son he's got knowledge. My son can tell you the music catalog. I can't tell you anything else.
Yeah. Wow, you've got street cred, Wes Durham.
Wes, I'm astonished. That was great.
I think it was at Berkmar High School that Quavo was a quarterback too, by the way, outside of Atlanta.
See, he's lapping me with the Quavo knowledge.
I love it.
And by the way, Jordan, your last name is also the name of an small Italian restaurant chain in the Metro Atlanta area, Capozzi's.
Oh, I need a sponsor. Sounds like I need an international sponsor.
Yeah, NIL in your own life. There you go. Congratulations.
All right, Wes.
What do you want,
let's
Steve?
talk some
Where do
hoops.
you want to go?
Now that you've put me to shame with my music knowledge.
You're fine. Come on. Don't stretch here. You're fine. Trust me.
I'm gonna hit you with I'm not wasting any time. We're gonna jump right into this. So Paulie and I have been talking on the show the last couple of days about the postseason awards.
Sure.
Adrian Autry, Coach of the Year nominee. Do you think he's a legit candidate given what he's done in his first year with this team to have them even in position to go to the NCAA tournament? Is he up for the award in your mind?
He certainly should be considered. I don't think he'll win.
Right.
I think Hubert Davis or Steve Forbes will win. That's just my opinion. I mean, I think, and that's not because of and look, the one thing I want to destroy a myth on when I'm on with guys like you is that the way this thing goes, because everybody votes in North Carolina, means that the North Carolina schools win things. And that's not just the case anymore because they've changed the voting process. The voting process is not what it used to be. It's now a select number of people from every school in the league. So, and it's not people at the school. It's media that covers the school. It's the home radio announcer, things of that nature. Steve, you may have a vote. I mean, you could be on the.
Do.
So you're on.
I do, as a matter of fact.
You're on the Syracuse basketball, maybe in the football media panel that now votes for this. So, and it's also, by the way, why the coaches also have a team. You know that the coaches have an all-ACC football team. They also have a basketball team. The coaches got fed up with the construction of the committee or the membership voting years ago in the ACC and the old Atlantic Coast Sports Media Association. That's changed now. So anyway, I think Adrian certainly should be considered. I think the bigger issue, to be honest with you, is that I think there are three guys that are first-team all-ACC today for me. They're locks. R.J. Davis, P.J. Hall, and Hunter Salas of Wake Forest. After that, I've got about four guys for the other two spots.
Yeah. Right.
And Judah Mintz is one of those guys. In my opinion, Judah Mintz is a lot more than just some guy that goes hard off the dribble to the basket and gets to the free throw line a lot. His numbers in terms of steals, his numbers in assists, his contribution across the board to what Syracuse is doing, if they can finish strong, I think gives him an outside shot to make it too.
All right, so let's go there with Judah then, because Wes, we do this every day here in Syracuse, and there have been fans locally that have been quite critical of Judah Mintz this year, and some of his decision making in late game situations. I think by and large he's been really good. I mean, he was awesome in their last game against Virginia Tech, 29.6 assists. from the outside looking in, what can you say about Judah, his game? I think people, they raise their expectations based on how good he was as a freshman, and I think maybe some had unrealistic expectations of Judah this year. What kind of year is he having in your opinion?
I think he's had a really good year. I think he's had the kind of years I said that I think certainly gets him in the conversation for first-team All-ACC. I think the bigger question for me is going to be, as the Oranges collectively, how does J.J. Starling play? How does, Bell play? How does Brown play? That kind of thing. What is Copeland giving you? That type deal. Because when I had him against NC State, I noticed that Starling got off to a great start. Mintz was terrific that night, but Starling was exceptional. And they were really, really good that night. I think when they won in Raleigh, Bell was still going on his tear, right? And, they had an opportunity there to get out to a great start. I think when Mintz plays and it's just Mintz, I think sometimes it can get 50-50. But when Starling's with him or Bell's with him or Brown helps inside or Copeland does some nice things or even three guys at a time, I think it gives Syracuse a much stronger chance to win. And I think that'll be a huge key tomorrow night against Louisville. I think it'll be a key when they go to Clemson. And I think it'll be a key when they get in the tournament in Washington week after next.
People will look at Louisville's record and say, well, this should be a win for Syracuse. And we know how that goes, right? I mean, they played, Syracuse to a 2-point game in the Dome, went right down to the wire. Right. And Louisville probably thinks they should have won that game. Well, what stands out to you about this Cardinals team? I'm sure you've seen them several times and you're preparing to call the game. What stands out to you about the Cardinals?
For me, it's whether or not they have any help from Mike James. Mike James has probably been their most consistent player. I think he's a talented guy, but he's got to have some help. Some nights it's been Tyler Johnson. Some nights it's been Scott Clark. A couple nights it's been, Webb, the freshman. It's going to be interesting to see kind of who shows up. Curtis Williams has helped him a couple times. I think Brandon Huntley Hatfield's underrated as a post guy. I think he's much improved from a year ago. I think he's got his confidence back. But the reality of it is there's always drama around Louisville, Steve and Jordan. That's the bigger issue for Louisville. I'm always, when I get ready to do a Louisville game, I want to make sure I know who's playing. Their roster has been in complete flux since damn near game one this year. And now Hersey Miller's gone for the year. Trainer's gone for the year. I mean, they have as many guys on the shelf as they do on the roster at times. And so I think that's been a distraction for Louisville in many ways publicly, but I do agree they're much improved, but much improved doesn't count when it's only 8 wins, guys. It just doesn't. And, Kenny Payne's 12-48 in his second year, and we all know it's a production business, as they say. So,
sure. So go ahead, Jordan.
Oh, yeah. Wes, I want to know what you just think the game's going to look like. It was in the 90s the last time these two teams faced off, and now Louisville's lost 3 straight games by 20-plus points. They haven't gotten into the 60s. I don't know if it's kind of, a letdown for them as the end of the season comes and they're not doing too well. Sure. But do you see this tomorrow being a high-scoring affair at the KFC Yum Center, or do you think Louisville's offensive struggles continue and maybe Syracuse can, I don't want to say an easy one on the road, but do you see it being in the 80s, 90s again?
I do see it being in the 80s or 90s. And if it's not, I think that favors Syracuse. But even if it is high scoring, I still like Syracuse a lot. I think the Orange are just playing with a lot more confidence than Louisville is. And your point about the margins in the last handful of games, Jordan, is got to be a concern. Because if you didn't know better, you'd think they may have sacked the Bats. Now, I will say this. They have 3 straight home games, does Louisville, to finish the regular season at home. One of the things tomorrow night that's going to impact the game, we won't know until we get there, and that's how many people are going to be there. Because I have seen a couple games this year, midweek games principally, where I'm not sure they couldn't have roped off the upper deck and just brought everybody downstairs, if you know what I mean.
Right.
It's been lightly attended. Old buddy of mine used to call them P&Gs when we did college baseball. And I said P&Gs, and he'd say, yeah, just the only people here are parents and girlfriends, man. And I am hopeful we don't have that tomorrow night in Louisville, because the one thing I can tell you about having been there, and the last time I actually had Louisville at home was the Kentucky game. And the bigger concern right now about Louisville basketball is not just Louisville basketball, it's the economics of Louisville basketball. And not the economics of the people in the arena, but the economics of the commerce around the KFC Yum Center, the hotels, the restaurants, the things like this. A Saturday night 8 o'clock game in Louisville is eerily similar, on par with what a Saturday night game at JMA is like, right? I mean, it's an event. It's a social event.
Sure.
That's not been the case much this year. And tomorrow night is going to be, kind of a litmus test about where the community feels this basketball team is. And a lack of a crowd tomorrow night, I think, would be a huge, huge red flag to what a lot of us think is already going to happen anyway.
Right. All right, let's talk about SU and the NCAA tournament if we could.
Okay.
3 weeks ago, I thought there was no chance, other than winning the ACC. And now they've rattled off, 4 of 5 wins. Yep. They beat North Carolina. They've got certainly a very winnable game tomorrow. And then, Clemson, let's see what happens. What do you think needs to happen? Cuse is, 82nd right now in the net rankings. What do you think needs to happen for this team to get an at-large bid? Is it, win these two, win a couple, in D.C.? Is it less than that? What do they need to do in your mind?
Yeah, I think the Clemson game certainly at Little John becomes huge, right, Steve? I think that's a big game. Tomorrow night is obviously a must. You can't lose to, and thank goodness Louisville's not 320 like they were last year. They're 210. But still, that's a game you don't want to lose. And then you go to Clemson. And it's senior night for PJ Hall. Just saying. It's the kind of night. And Clemson, by the way, is still in the hunt for the double bye. Clemson's in a position where they're going to have to beat, they're going to have to win at Notre Dame. They're going to need to beat Syracuse to set up a regular season finale at Wake Forest that follows Duke and Carolina next Saturday night to potentially determine that last double bye. So Clemson's going to have all their chips in the table. I think for Syracuse, if you win the ball game tomorrow night, you then win a couple in Washington. And by that, I mean you win Wednesday and you win Thursday and you get to the semifinals, right? I think you've given yourself a chance for pretty strong consideration. Now, if we're going to pay attention to the net, then we're going to be in trouble. You're going to have to do this by the eye test. We're going to have to I'm a firm believer that the net is going to be reduced when that committee gets in its room. I honestly believe that. I think the only reason we've paid attention to this damn thing for 5 years, guys, is because it's got the NCAA's name on it, right? Elsewise, we'd have kicked this thing to the curb and called it everything but, a bad day. And and I think the only reason we've now been subjected to a net resistance, if you will, is because the game is up. The NCAA paraded it out. They didn't want to tell you the elements. Coaches knew that the margin of victory element was capped at 20, but the efficiency metric wasn't. And that's what's created the discrepancy in the deal. And, I give Coach Boeheim a lot of credit in the last couple of weeks, being as public as he is about it. And then the ACC coaches, Brad Brownell and Jeff Capel, followed obviously this week. And I think a lot of people are saying the same thing now across the country, not just guys in the ACC. And, hey, look, congratulations to the Big 12. They found out what the secret sauce was, and they've been able to kind of game the net, as they say. And I think that's a credit to them. And it didn't hurt that Iowa State's athletic director was on the basketball committee. Wonder how he found out, right? Wonder how they were able to pull it off. So long story short here, Steve and Jordan, I think Syracuse does have a chance. But at the same time, I think a couple wins in Washington, Wednesday and Thursday, would certainly help their cause a lot.
Yeah, that game at Clemson, that's going to be a tough ask. You mentioned senior night for P.J. Hall. Also, Joe Girard against the Orange Part 2, and we saw him in the Dome. He refused to let
Jordan, his name is Joseph Girard III, Jordan.
I got to do more research. Never heard of him.
You turn your mic off, Jordan.
I got to do more research. Never heard of him.
Yeah, I hear you.
Listen, Wes, you are the best. Appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much for the time.
Do you think Paulie's made it to Ohio? Do you think Paulie's made it to Dayton or Cleveland or any of those ports? He was
Erie, Pennsylvania.
Erie,
right?
Pennsylvania last night. He went halfway, stayed in Erie last night, and then his plan was to drive the rest of the way today.
He is a beauty, boys.
He is. He's unique. I'll say that about him.
Yeah.
He is one of a kind.
Great to be with you guys. Thanks for asking. I appreciate it very much. And don't forget, Steve, Quavo is part of the Migos from Atlanta.
I got it. I got it now.
There you go.
Thank you,
Take care,
Wes.
guys. Be well.
Great Wes Durham.
You bet.
joining us here on the show.
He's the man.
And with that, we'll hit a timeout. When we return, we'll get to the match game with Matt Gavendo from Elite Wealth Management. We'll talk Syracuse. We'll talk Louisville. That's next on ESPN Radio.